The big blue alien stood up from his chair. His forearms moved as he talked to the other aliens in the room. They all looked scared. The human ships had been taking over planets that no one else wanted. Dead planets, dangerous planets. Planets that should have killed anyone who tried to live there. "These humans are crazy," said Admiral Kethver. His voice came through the translator box with a buzz. "They send miners to worlds that killed our best soldiers. They use old broken ships held together with tape and glue, but somehow they win. Where we fail," the other aliens nodded. They had all tried to stop the humans before. It never worked. The humans just kept coming. They would land on a planet that was covered in acid rain and say it was perfect for farming. They would find a moon with no air and build a city on it. They made no sense. "We need to test them," said another alien. This one looked like a giant spider made of metal. "If they are really as good as they seem, we will accept them as equals. If not, we will send them back to the edge of space where they belong." The vote was quick. Every alien in the room agreed. The humans would face the best military force in the galaxy, the Xanthari 7th Fleet. These were the soldiers who had won 1,000 battles. They had never lost a fight. Their ships were perfect. Their training was perfect. Their weapons were perfect. The message was sent to Earth. The humans had 30 days to prepare. Captain Jake Morrison was drinking beer at Murphy's bar when the message came through. The bar was on Frontier Station 7, a space station that floated between 3 different star systems. It was the kind of place where people went when they had nowhere else to go. Jake looked at his communication device. The screen showed an official message from Earth Command. He read it twice before he understood what it meant. "Well, this is interesting," he said out loud. The bar was full of the usual crowd. Betty Walsh sat in the corner, her hands covered in grease from fixing something all day. She was a miner who could fix any machine with whatever she had lying around. Next to her sat Danny Cruz, a cargo runner who had been attacked by pirates so many times that his ship looked like it had been through a war. Lisa Park was there too, drinking something that glowed green. She bought and sold old broken spaceships for a living. "What's interesting?" asked Betty. She took a long drink from her bottle. Jake held up his device. "Earth Command wants us to represent humanity's finest military tradition." Danny started laughing so hard he spit out his drink. "Us? Military tradition? Jake, you got kicked out of the Navy for painting your ship bright pink?" "That was for team spirit," Jake said. "And they only demoted me. They didn't kick me out." "Same thing," said Lisa. "What does Earth Command want us to do exactly?" Jake read from the message. "Report to the Kepler 442 system in 30 days for military exercises against the Xanthari 7th Fleet. Winner gets to decide humanity's place in the galaxy." The bar went quiet. Everyone knew about the Xanthari. They were the best soldiers in known space. Their ships were huge and powerful. Their weapons could destroy planets. They had never lost a battle, so we're dead, said Betty. "Probably," agreed Jake. "But the pay is good." "And if we win, humanity gets to keep all the planets we've been settling?" "What if we lose?" asked Danny. Jake shrugged. "Then we get sent back to Earth and told to stay there." Pete Harrison walked into the bar just as Jake finished explaining. Pete was a real military officer, the only one on the station. He wore a clean uniform and always followed the rules. He looked tired. "I just got my orders," Pete said. "I'm supposed to command this mission." "Command what?" asked Lisa. "A mining ship, a cargo hauler, and whatever Danny calls that thing he flies." "It's a transport," Danny said. "A very special transport. It's held together with space tape and prayer," Betty pointed out. Pete sat down heavily. "This is insane. The Xanthari 7th Fleet has 500 ships. We have 4. They have trained soldiers. We have a mechanic, a smuggler, and a salvage operator." "Don't forget the pink ship, Captain," added Danny with a grin. Pete put his head in his hands. "We're going to die." "Maybe," said Jake. "But we might surprise them." "How?" asked Pete. "They have better ships, better weapons, better training. They've been fighting wars for centuries. We fix things and haul cargo." Betty stood up and walked. over to the window. Outside, they could see the edge of human space. Small ships moved between the stars, carrying people and supplies to worlds that no one else wanted. The ships were old and patched up, but they kept flying. "That's exactly the point," she said. "They fight wars. We survive impossible things every day. They have perfect ships in perfect formation. We have ships that shouldn't work but do anyway." "She's right," said Lisa. "I've been in space for 20 years. I've seen human ships held together with nothing but stubbornness keep flying when alien ships with perfect design fall apart." Danny nodded. "Remember the pirate attack on Frontier? Station 12? The defense force had 2 working ships and a mining platform. They were outnumbered 10 to 1. But they won because they did things the pirates didn't expect." Pete looked around the bar. "So what's the plan?" Jake finished his beer and stood up. "Same plan we always use." "We'll figure it out as we go." "That's not a plan," Pete said. "That's just hoping for luck. It's worked so far," said Betty. "I've been mining asteroids for 15 years. Every day something goes wrong. Every day I figure out how to fix it with whatever I have. That's what humans do." "The Xanthari expect us to fight like soldiers," added Lisa. "Perfect formation, perfect strategy, perfect execution. But we're not soldiers, we're just people who refuse to give up." Jake looked at his friends. They weren't heroes. They weren't soldiers. They were just ordinary people who had learned to survive in the hardest places in the galaxy. But maybe that was enough. "All right," he said. "Let's go represent humanity's finest military tradition." "What military tradition?" asked Danny. Jake grinned, making it up as we go along. The bar erupted in laughter. They had 30 days to prepare for the most important battle in human history. They had no plan, no strategy, and no hope of winning. But they had something the Xanthari didn't. They had absolutely nothing to lose. The next morning, Jake woke up with a headache and a message from Earth Command. They wanted a full report on his fleet's capabilities. He looked around his small room on the station and laughed. His fleet was 4 ships and 5 people. His capabilities were fixing things with tape and hoping for the best. He found Pete in the station's command center, staring at a screen full of numbers. The military officer looked like he hadn't slept. "Bad news?" asked Jake. Pete pointed at the screen. "Xanthari's 7th Fleet, 500 ships. Each one bigger than our entire fleet combined. They have particle beam weapons, quantum torpedoes, and shields that can stop a planet killer." "What do we have?" asked Jake. "Betty's mining ship has industrial cutting tools. Danny's transport has a cargo hold full of spare parts. Lisa's salvage ship has a really big hook. And your ship has that pink paint job that somehow makes it invisible to most sensors?" Jake nodded. "That's not completely terrible." "Yes, it is," Pete said. "This is a military operation. We need weapons, shields, trained crews. We have a mechanic who talks to machines and a smuggler who won 12 different violations of space law." 13, said Danny, walking into the room. "I got another one last week for creative cargo manifest filing," Pete groaned. "This is hopeless." "Maybe," said Jake. "But let's see what we can do with what we have." They spent the next week gathering supplies. Betty went through the station's recycling center looking for anything useful. She found old mining charges, industrial welding equipment, and a broken holographic projector that Danny thought he could fix. "What do you need all this junk for?" asked Pete. "It's not junk," Betty said, holding up a mining charge. "This is a rock cracker. It's designed to split asteroids. With a few modifications, it could split a ship." "That's not a weapon," Pete protested. "That's mining equipment. Same thing," Betty replied. "Just depends on what you're mining." Danny was working on his own projects. He had convinced the station's computer technician to let him borrow some equipment. When Jake found him, he was surrounded by wires and circuit boards. "What are you building?" Jake asked. "Surprise," Danny said with a grin. "Remember how your pink ship doesn't show up on scanners properly? Well, I'm working on making my ship look like something completely different." "Different how?" Danny pointed to a small device covered in blinking lights. This little beauty will make my cargo transport look like a battleship, or 12 different ships, or maybe a space station. Depends on how I set it up. Jake was impressed. That's actually clever. Don't sound so surprised, Danny said. I've been tricking customs officers for years. Alien military scanners can't be much harder to fool. Lisa was taking a different approach. She had moved her salvage ship to the station's repair bay and was welding extra metal plates to the front of it. When Jake asked what she was doing, she just smiled. Building a better ram, she said. My ship is designed to grab onto big heavy things and pull them around. With some modifications, it can grab onto big heavy things and throw them around. That's your strategy, ramming? It's worked before, Lisa said. Pirates expect you to run or surrender. They don't expect you to drive straight at them at full speed. Pete watched all this preparation with growing worry. This isn't how military operations work, he complained. We need proper weapons, proper tactics, proper training. We have training, Betty said. I've been fixing broken things in dangerous places for 15 years. That's training. I've been smuggling cargo past alien patrol ships for 10 years, added Danny. That's training too. And I've been salvaging wrecks in asteroid fields since I was 18, said Lisa. You learn to think fast when you're surrounded by floating rocks that want to crush you. Jake looked at his friends. They weren't soldiers, but they were survivors. They had all learned to solve problems with whatever they had available. That had to count for something. What about you? Pete asked Jake. What's your training? Jake thought about it. I've been hauling cargo between frontier worlds for 15 years. I've dealt with pirates, equipment failures, navigation problems, and customers who don't pay. I've learned that every problem has a solution if you're creative enough. And if you're not creative enough? Asked Pete. Then you make something up and hope it works, Jake replied. They spent the next 2 weeks practicing. Betty taught everyone how to use her mining equipment. Danny showed them how his holographic projector worked. Lisa demonstrated her ramming technique using old cargo containers as targets. Pete tried to organize them into proper military formations. It didn't work. Every time he gave an order, someone would suggest a different way to do it. Every time he planned a strategy, someone would point out a better approach. You can't fight a war by committee, Pete said after a particularly chaotic practice session. We're not fighting a war, Jake replied. We're solving a problem. And the best way to solve a problem is to listen to everyone's ideas. That's not how military command works. Good thing we're not military then, said Betty. The station's other residents watched the preparations with interest. Word had spread about the upcoming battle. Some people thought the humans were crazy. Others thought they were brave. A few thought they might actually have a chance. What do you think? Asked Murphy, the bar owner, as he watched the team work. I think they're all insane, said a trader from the inner systems. The Zenthari are going to crush them. Maybe, said an old miner, but I've seen these people work. They don't give up. Ever, Jake overheard the conversation and smiled. Not. Giving up was probably the most human thing there was. On the last day before they had to leave, the team gathered in Murphy's bar one more time. Their ships were as ready as they could make them. Betty's mining ship was loaded with improvised weapons. Danny's transport was equipped with his holographic projector and a cargo hold full of surprises. Lisa's salvage ship had been turned into a battering ram. Jake's cargo hauler was still pink, but now it was also loaded with emergency supplies. And spare parts? Any last words? Asked Jake. This is still insane, said Pete. We're going to face the best military force in the galaxy with mining equipment and cargo ships. That's what makes it interesting, said Danny. The Zenthari expect us to fight like soldiers, added Betty. Perfect formation, perfect strategy, perfect execution, but we're not soldiers. What are we then? Asked Pete. Jake looked around the bar. It was full of people who had come to the frontier because they didn't fit in anywhere else. Miners, traders, salvagers, and smugglers. People who had learned to survive in the hardest places in the galaxy. We're humans, he said simply. We adapt, we improvise. We find a way to win even when we shouldn't, and if we lose? Asked Lisa. Jake shrugged. Then we lose, but we'll make it interesting. The next morning, they launched their ships and headed for the Kepler 442 system. Behind them, Frontier Station 7 watched them go. In front of them waited the most powerful military force in the galaxy. Jake looked at his control panel. Everything was working, mostly. His pink ship was holding together, barely. His crew was ready, sort of. This is either going to be the greatest victory in human history, he said over the radio, or the most entertaining defeat. Either way, replied Betty, it's going to be fun. The Kepler 442 system was full of floating rocks. Asteroids drifted everywhere, some as small as cars, others as big as cities. It was the perfect place for a space battle if you wanted lots of places to hide and lots of things to crash into. The Centauri 7th Fleet arrived first. 500 ships moved in perfect formation, like a deadly dance in space. Each ship was silver and smooth, built for war. They arranged themselves in battle lines that had won fights across the galaxy for centuries. Admiral Kethver stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the empty space where the humans should appear. His 4 arms moved across control panels with practiced ease. He had fought in more battles than most species had years of history. Sir, said his communications officer, the humans are 20 minutes late. Kethver made a sound that might have been laughter. Typical. They cannot even arrive on time for their own defeat. Then the human ships appeared. Jake's pink cargo hauler came first, followed by Betty's mining ship, which looked like someone had welded a construction site to a space engine. Danny's transport was next, and it was trailing smoke from an engine that probably should have been fixed months ago. Lisa's salvage ship brought up the rear, and it looked like it had been designed by someone who thought armor plating was just suggestions. Are those their warships? Asked the Centauri tactical officer. Admiral Kethver studied the approaching human fleet. They appear to be cargo vessels and industrial equipment. Should we be concerned? About 4 obsolete ships held together with primitive adhesives? No, this will be over quickly. The humans finally got into something that might have been a formation if you used your imagination. Jake's voice came over the communication channel, speaking in the calm tone of someone who fixed broken things for a living. Centauri Fleet. This is Captain Jake Morrison. We're ready when you are. This is Admiral Kethver of the Centauri 7th Fleet. Prepare to be destroyed. Okay, Jake replied. Thanks for the warning. The battle started with the Centauri doing what they always did. They moved their ships in a perfect pincer movement, designed to surround the enemy and destroy them from all sides. It was a strategy that had worked for centuries against every enemy they had ever faced. Then the humans did something that made no sense at all. They split up. Jake's pink ship went left. Betty's mining ship went right. Danny's transport went straight up. Lisa's salvage ship went straight down. In seconds, the tight human formation had become 4 ships scattered across the asteroid field. What are they doing? Demanded the Centauri tactical officer. This is not any recognized military strategy. They are panicking, Admiral Kethver said. Continue the attack. But the Centauri formation was designed to surround a group of ships, not chase 4 different targets in 4 different directions. As they tried to adjust, their perfect lines began to break apart. Jake's voice came over the radio again. All right, everybody knows what to do. Betty, you're on rock duty. Danny, do that thing you do. Lisa, find something big to hit them with. Pete, try to keep track of who's supposed to be on our side. This is not a plan, Pete's voice replied. This is chaos. Same thing, Jake said cheerfully. Betty's mining ship was the first to cause problems. She started launching mining charges into the asteroid field. The explosives were designed to crack rocks, and they did exactly that. Suddenly, the battlefield was full of flying debris, turning the area into a deadly obstacle course. Sir, reported a Centauri sensor operator, the enemy is destroying the asteroids. Why? Asked Admiral Kethver. Unknown, sir. The answer became clear when the Centauri ships tried to maintain their formation. Flying rocks were everywhere, forcing them to break apart or risk collision. Their perfect battle lines turned into individual ships dodging debris. Meanwhile, Danny's transport was doing something impossible. His ship's holographic projector was working overtime, making a single cargo vessel look like a massive battleship. Then the image split, and suddenly there appeared to be 12 different ships where there had been one. "Sir," the sensor operator sounded confused. "The enemy fleet appears to have multiplied." "That's impossible," Admiral Kethver said. "Sensors don't lie." But his ship's targeting systems were trying to lock onto targets that weren't really there. Weapons fired at holographic images while the real ship slipped away unseen, Lisa's salvage. Ship was causing its own kind of trouble. She had found an old mining platform drifting in the asteroid field, something left over from when this system had been mined for precious metals. Her ship's industrial grappling systems locked onto the platform, and she began swinging it like a massive club. "Contact!" shouted a Xanthari pilot as the mining platform smashed into his ship's shields. "I'm under attack by a space station." "Space stations don't move," replied his commander. "This one does." The Xanthari squadron scattered to avoid the swinging platform. Their formation dissolved as pilots tried to figure out how to fight an enemy who was using industrial equipment as weapons. Jake's pink cargo hauler was doing its own part. His ship's weird paint job made it nearly invisible to most sensors, and he was using that advantage to drop cargo containers throughout the battlefield. The containers were filled with mining equipment that Danny had rigged with proximity sensors. When a Xanthari ship got close, the containers would suddenly activate, extending mechanical arms and trying to grab onto the ship. The containers broadcast messages in 17 different languages, all saying the same thing: "Surrender now for immediate processing." "Sir," reported another confused Xanthari officer, "the enemy appears to be using psychological warfare. Their weapons are trying to capture our ships and demanding surrender." Admiral Kethver watched his perfect battle plan fall apart. His ships were scattered, confused, and dodging everything from flying rocks to holographic illusions to cargo containers that wanted to be friends. "All ships," he commanded, "ignore the distractions. Focus on the enemy vessels." But that was easier said than done. Betty's mining ship was now completely covered in welded armor plating made from asteroid debris. She looked like a flying junkyard, but her industrial cutting tools were slicing through Xanthari shields like they were made of paper. "Betty to all ships," her cheerful voice came over the radio. "I've got 3 Xanthari cruisers tangled up in mining cable. Anyone need spare parts?" Danny's transport was still multiplying, now appearing to be an entire fleet of different ships. Some looked like battleships, others like cargo vessels, and one looked like a giant space whale for reasons no one could explain. "The enemy fleet now appears to number in the hundreds," reported the increasingly frantic Xanthari sensor operator. "And one of them is broadcasting what our translators identify as ancient Earth music." That would be Danny's idea of psychological warfare. Jake could hear the music over the radio. Some old song about not stopping and believing in something. Lisa had found more things to throw. Her salvage ship was now herding asteroids like a space cowboy, using her grappling systems to launch rocks at Xanthari ships. When she ran out of rocks, she started grabbing disabled Xanthari vessels and using them as projectiles. "This is insane," Pete's voice came over the radio. He was the only one trying to fight a normal space battle, but he kept accidentally herding Xanthari ships into the traps his teammates had created. "Welcome to the frontier," Jake replied, as his ship towed a Xanthari fighter that had gotten stuck in Danny's holographic projector. "Out here, we make our own rules." The battle had turned into something that no military academy had ever taught. The Xanthari, with all their training and perfect equipment, found themselves fighting an enemy that didn't follow any rules they understood. "Sir," the tactical officer said quietly, "we're losing." Admiral Kethver looked at the tactical display. His 500 ships were scattered, confused, and being systematically disabled by 4 humans who fought like they were having fun instead of trying to win a war. "How?" he asked. "I don't know, sir." "They're not following any known military doctrine? They're just making things up as they go?" And that, Admiral Kethver realized, was exactly the problem. The Xanthari knew how to fight soldiers. They didn't know how to fight people who treated war like a creative engineering problem. "All ships," he commanded, "prepare for emergency withdrawal," but it was too late. The humans had turned the entire battlefield into their playground, and the Xanthari were just visitors who didn't know the rules of the game. The battle continued, but it wasn't really a battle anymore. It was more like watching 4 humans solve a very complicated puzzle while 500 aliens tried to figure out what the puzzle was supposed to be. Betty's mining ship had become the center of the strangest rescue operation in galactic history. Her industrial cutting tools were designed to slice through solid rock, but they worked just as well on ship hulls. Instead of destroying the Xanthari vessels, she was carefully cutting them open and offering repairs. "Attention Xanthari Cruiser Number 7, Betty's voice came over the radio. "Your engine is making a very unhappy noise. Would you like me to take a look at it?" The Xanthari pilot was so confused that he actually said yes. Betty's ship extended a mechanical arm and began welding a patch over a hole in the cruiser's hull. "There you go," she said cheerfully. "That should hold until you can get to a proper repair station. Also, whoever installed your fusion reactor did a terrible job. You're lucky it hasn't exploded yet." Admiral Kethver watched this happening and felt something he had never experienced before in battle: complete bewilderment. The enemy was fixing his ships. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "the human mining vessel is offering to upgrade our shield generators. She says our current ones are 20 years out of date." "This is warfare," Admiral Kethver said weakly. "They're supposed to be destroying us. Should I tell her no?" The Admiral looked at his tactical display. 3 more of his ships had just accepted help from the human mining vessel. Their weapons were more powerful, and their shields were stronger than they had been an hour ago. "I don't know," he admitted. Meanwhile, Danny's transport was putting on the greatest magic show in space. His holographic projector was now creating an entire fake fleet that changed every few minutes. Sometimes it looked like 100 battleships. Sometimes it looked like a space city. Once it looked like a giant butterfly made of light, the Xanthari. Targeting systems were having nervous breakdowns trying to keep track of what was real and what wasn't. Weapons fired at empty space while the real ships slipped around behind them. "Danny, to all ships," came his voice over the radio. "I've got 17 Xanthari fighters chasing holographic targets. They've been flying in circles for 10 minutes. Are they having fun?" asked Jake. "Hard to tell. They keep shooting at things that aren't there." Jake's pink cargo hauler was running the most unusual delivery service in the galaxy. His ship was dropping cargo containers full of supplies throughout the battlefield. Some containers held repair equipment, others held food and water. A few held entertainment systems because Jake thought the Xanthari might be bored. "Delivery for Xanthari Squadron Leader Vexstar," Jake announced over the radio. 1 container of emergency rations, 1 container of spare parts, and 1 container of what Danny assures me are the greatest movies ever made by humans. "Why are you giving us supplies?" asked the confused Xanthari Squadron Leader. "Because you're going to need them," Jake replied. "Lisa's about to ram your flagship with an asteroid." The squadron leader looked at his sensors just in time to see a massive rock heading straight for his ship. He managed to dodge, but the asteroid crashed into 2 of his escort vessels. They weren't destroyed, just severely dented. Lisa's salvage ship was now herding asteroids like a space cowboy. Her grappling systems could lock onto multiple targets at once, and she was using them to play a game of 3-dimensional billiards. "With rocks and spaceships, strike," she announced as she bounced an asteroid off 2 Xanthari cruisers and into a third. "That's a spare." "Lisa," Pete's voice came over the radio, "this is supposed to be a military operation." "It is," Lisa replied. "I'm operating militarily, just with more style than usual." Pete was having the strangest day of his military career. He was trying to fight a proper space battle, but every time he engaged a Xanthari ship, one of his teammates would do something that changed the rules completely. "Pete to Jake," he said over the radio. "I'm trying to attack the Xanthari command ship. But Betty is giving them a tune-up and Danny has surrounded them with holographic dancing girls. Are the dancing girls working? Jake asked. The entire Xanthari Bridge crew is staring at them instead of fighting. And it's working perfectly. The chaos was spreading throughout the Xanthari fleet. Ships that had trained together for years were now scattered across the asteroid field, dealing with problems they had never imagined. Some were being repaired by a friendly human mechanic. Others were being entertained by holographic shows. A few were playing dodge the asteroid with a human salvage operator. Who thought ramming was a legitimate military tactic? Admiral Kethver tried to regain control of the situation. All ships return to formation, ignore the distractions. But his ships couldn't return to formation because there was no safe place to form up. The asteroid field was now a maze of debris, holographic illusions, and helpful human cargo containers. Every time his ships tried to group together, something would happen to scatter them again. Sir, his tactical officer reported, Squadron 12 is requesting permission to accept the human mechanic's offer to install better weapons. Absolutely not, Admiral Kethver said. We do not accept help from the enemy. But sir, she's offering to upgrade our particle cannons to quantum phase disruptors. That's technology we've been trying to develop for 50 years, the Admiral paused. Quantum phase disruptors were incredibly advanced weapons. If the humans had that technology, why weren't they using it, sir? The tactical officer asked. Tell them ... Admiral Kethver struggled with the decision. Tell them to ask what she wants in return. A few minutes later, the answer came back. She wants to know if we have any good stories about space battles. She says she's always interested in hearing about different fighting techniques. The most powerful military commander in the Xanthari Empire found himself negotiating with a human mechanic who wanted to trade advanced weapons technology for war stories. This is not how military operations work, he said to no one in particular. Meanwhile, Jake was having the time of his life. His pink cargo hauler was zipping through the battlefield, dropping supplies and picking up disabled Xanthari ships. His ship's weird paint job made it nearly invisible so he could go anywhere without being noticed. Jake to all ships, he announced. I've got 12 Xanthari fighters in my cargo hold. They had engine problems. I'm going to drop them off at the repair station Betty set up. You captured 12 fighters? Asked Pete. I rescued them, Jake corrected. Their engines failed when they tried to chase Danny's holographic fleet through an asteroid field. I just happened to be in the neighborhood. The Xanthari fighters were not prisoners, they were passengers. Jake had given them hot coffee and shown them how his ship's navigation system worked. They were now having a technical discussion about the advantages of human engineering versus Xanthari precision. Your ship should not be able to fly, one of the Xanthari pilots said. The engineering is completely wrong. That's what makes it interesting, Jake replied. We don't build ships to be perfect. We build them to keep working when everything goes wrong. But perfection is the goal of all engineering. Not human engineering, Jake said. Human engineering is about making things work no matter what. Perfect things break when they encounter something they weren't designed for. Human things just adapt. The Xanthari pilot thought about this. His own ship was a masterpiece of engineering, but it had broken down the moment it encountered something unexpected. Jake's ship was held together with tape and prayer, but it was still flying. Your methods are inefficient, the pilot said finally. But they work, Jake replied. And that's what matters. By this time, the battle had become something completely different from what either side had planned. The Xanthari were learning about human engineering. The humans were learning about Xanthari technology. Ships were being repaired instead of destroyed. Stories were being shared instead of missiles. This is the strangest military exercise I've ever seen, Admiral Kethver said to his communications officer. Sir, should we continue the attack? The Admiral looked at his tactical display. His ships were scattered, but they were also being improved by human technology. His crews were confused, but they were also fascinated by human methods. This was supposed to be a test of military strength, but it had become something else entirely. I don't know, he admitted. I honestly don't. know what we're doing anymore. And that perhaps was the most human thing of all. The battle ended not with explosions or surrenders, but with the most unusual peace treaty in galactic history. It happened when Admiral Kethver's flagship suffered a complete engine failure right in the middle of the asteroid field. "Sir," his engineering officer reported, "the main drive is offline. We're drifting toward that large asteroid." Admiral Kethver looked at the tactical display. His flagship, the pride of the Xanthari fleet, was helpless. In any normal battle, this would be the end. The enemy would either destroy him or capture him. Instead, Jake's pink cargo hauler appeared alongside the massive warship. "Xanthari flagship, this is Jake Morrison. Looks like you've got engine trouble. Need a hand?" The admiral stared at the communications device. The enemy was offering to help him. "This is Admiral Kethver," he replied slowly. "Why would you assist us?" "Because you're about to crash into a rock," Jake said simply. "And that would be a waste of a perfectly good spaceship." Before the admiral could respond, Betty's mining ship had already moved into position. Her mechanical arms extended toward the Xanthari flagship, not to attack it, but to push it away from the asteroid. "Don't worry," Betty's voice came over the radio. "I've moved bigger things than this. Just hold still and let me do the work." Admiral Kethver watched in amazement as the small mining vessel pushed his massive warship to safety. It was like watching a child move a mountain through sheer determination. "There you go," Betty said cheerfully. "Now, about that engine problem. I took a look at your drive systems while I was pushing you. Whoever designed them was very smart, but they didn't plan for this kind of stress. Want me to fix it?" The admiral found himself in the strangest situation of his military career. The enemy was offering to repair his flagship in the middle of a battle. "Why?" he asked. "Because broken things should be fixed," Betty replied. "That's what I do." Over the next hour, something unprecedented happened in galactic military history. The battle stopped not because one side won, but because everyone got interested in solving technical problems together. Betty's mining ship docked with the Xanthari flagship, and she began working on the engine systems. The Xanthari engineers watched in fascination as she bypassed their safety systems and rerouted power in ways their designers had never imagined. "This is impossible," said the chief Xanthari engineer. "You're using the backup systems to boost the main drive. That should cause a catastrophic failure." "Only if you follow the manual," Betty replied, welding a new connection. "But manuals are written by people who never had to fix things in the middle of nowhere with nothing but spare parts and stubbornness." Meanwhile, Danny had docked his transport with 3 different Xanthari ships, sharing his holographic technology with their engineers. The Xanthari were amazed by the creative applications. "You use this for deception in battle?" asked one engineer. "Sometimes," Danny said. "But mostly I use it to make boring cargo runs more interesting. You can project anything you want. Movies, art, imaginary friends, makes the long trips between stars less lonely." The Xanthari engineer thought about this. In their culture, technology was used for specific purposes. The idea of using military equipment for entertainment was completely foreign. "Show me," the engineer said. Danny grinned and activated his projector. Suddenly, the cargo bay was filled with images of Earth, green forests, blue oceans, cities full of lights. The Xanthari engineers stared in wonder at a world they had never seen. "It's beautiful," one of them said quietly. "Yeah," Danny replied. "It's home." Lisa was having her own cultural exchange. Her salvage ship was surrounded by Xanthari vessels whose crews wanted to understand her ramming tactics. It turned out that the Xanthari had never considered using their ships as weapons in hand-to-hand combat. "Your shields are designed to stop energy weapons," Lisa explained, "but they're not built to handle kinetic impact. A good solid ram can disable a ship without destroying it." "But ramming damages your own vessel," pointed out a Xanthari captain. "Sure," Lisa said, "but that's what repair stations are for. Besides, sometimes the best way to solve a problem is to hit it really hard." The Xanthari captain considered this. In their military doctrine, ships were valuable resources to be preserved at all costs. The idea of deliberately damaging your own ship to achieve victory was revolutionary. Jake was having the longest conversation of his life with Admiral Kethver. The Xanthari commander had invited him aboard the flagship to discuss human military tactics. "I don't understand," the admiral said as they sat in his command center. "Your forces have no organization, no strategy, no coordination. Yet you defeated the finest military fleet in the galaxy." "We didn't defeat you," Jake replied. "We just confused you until you stopped trying to fight us." "Is that a recognized military strategy?" Jake thought about it. "I don't know." "We don't really have military strategies? We just solve problems as they come up." "But how do you coordinate your forces without proper command structure?" "We talk to each other," Jake said simply. "When someone has a problem, they ask for help. When someone has an idea, they share it. When something needs to be done, whoever can do it best takes care of it." Admiral Keffer was quiet for a long time. In the Xanthari military, command flowed from the top down. Orders were given and followed without question. The idea of soldiers making their own decisions was terrifying. "What if someone makes the wrong decision?" he asked. "Then we fix it," Jake replied. "Making mistakes is how you learn. The trick is to make sure your mistakes don't kill you. And if they do," Jake shrugged, "then someone else learns from your mistake. That's how humans work. We share information, we adapt, we keep trying new things until something works." The admiral looked out at the asteroid field where both fleets were now working together. Xanthari and human engineers were exchanging ideas. Pilots were comparing techniques. Soldiers were sharing stories. This was supposed to be a test of military strength, he said. "Maybe it was," Jake replied. "But strength isn't just about having the biggest guns or the best shields. Sometimes strength is about being able to work with people who are different from you." Pete found them there an hour later. The military officer looked tired but amazed. "Jake," he said, "you need to see this." They went to the observation deck where they could see both fleets. The Xanthari ships were still in formation, but now human vessels were scattered among them. Engineers moved between ships, sharing technology and techniques. Crews worked together on repairs and improvements. "It's like the biggest technical conference in the galaxy," Pete said. "The Xanthari are learning about human engineering, and we're learning about their technology. Some of their ships are now 50% more efficient, and ours are twice as durable." Admiral Kethver watched his perfect military fleet being improved by a group of human mechanics and cargo haulers. It should have been humiliating, but instead it was fascinating. "How do we end this?" he asked. "Easy," Jake said. "We declare victory and go home." "But who won?" Jake looked at the mixed fleet of human and Xanthari ships working together in the asteroid field. "We all did." The final report to the Galactic Council was written jointly by Admiral Kethver and Captain Jake Morrison. It was the strangest military report in galactic history. The human military operates on principles completely different from all known military doctrine, the report stated. They have no formal command structure, no standardized equipment, and no unified strategy. However, they possess an ability to adapt and improvise that makes them extremely effective in unpredictable situations. Furthermore, the report continued, human forces show a remarkable ability to turn enemies into allies through the simple expedient of being helpful. Rather than destroying opposition, they prefer to understand it and work with it. The Galactic Council read the report with growing amazement. The humans had won not by defeating the Xanthari, but by making them partners. A recommendation. The report concluded, humans should be granted full membership in the Galactic Council and given access to all trade routes and colonization rights. However, they should not be asked to conform to standard military practices, as their effectiveness depends on their unconventional approach. 6 months later, Jake was back at Murphy's Bar on Frontier Station 7, nursing a beer and reading reports from the Outer Rim. Human colonies were thriving on worlds that other species had thought impossible to settle. Trade was booming between human and alien worlds. And somewhere in Xanthari space, Admiral Kethfer was implementing new military doctrines based on human improvisation techniques. Any regrets? Asked Betty, who was working on a new project that involved turning a cargo container into a mobile repair station. About what? Jake replied. About not fighting a proper war. Pete says we could have been heroes. Jake looked out the window at the stars beyond. Human ships moved between them, carrying people and cargo to places where no one had thought to go before. It was a bigger adventure than any war could be. We are heroes, he said. We just do it differently. And in the end, that was the most human thing of all.